right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Wednesday webinar. Super happy to have you all here with us. My name is Grace Bay. I am the CEO of Patton Logistics, and I'm going to be hosting the webinar today with Toni Tovi, who is the founder and president of Bright Flag Recruiting. We've got some really fun stuff to talk about today. It's a great time of the year to be talking about your plans for your team, how you're going to grow your team, who you want on your team, and your strategy for recruiting. So we're going to dive into that in just a minute with Toni. But as per usual, we have a couple things that we're going to do first before we get started with content. So first, the most boring thing of the day, I'm going to read a little disclaimer real quick. Route Consultant is not endorsed by, is not recommended by Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. Route Consultant is not sponsored by, is not approved by, and is not associated with, and has no connection whatsoever with Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. All right, so now that that is out of the way, I wanted to loop you all into one new listing that we have going live on our public website today. This is a line haul run operation in Eastern Pennsylvania. It is up for $450,000. That's 38.8% of revenue. And just some key bullet points on this one. So it's running at about an 8% EBITDA. It's one dedicated team run, one unassigned team run. Just a reminder that with those unassigns, you have a really cool opportunity to eventually convert those into dedicated runs through a bidding process, which we can talk about today or in the future if you're interested. But really good opportunity there. With line haul, remote ownership is oftentimes a lot easier, and definitely an option with this one. Remote ownership is something you could do here. And relatively low entry price into the FedEx Ground network. If you're looking for your first acquisition, this could be a good one for you. The business operates out of one of the largest terminals on the East Coast. So again, if growth is something you're interested in, converting unassigned to dedicated, or just grabbing more runs in general, being in a big hub is a great place to do that. And then the fleet consists of 2018 models, so good, pretty new trucks. And its small operation is really great for your first acquisition in the line haul space if that's something that you're interested in. And the truck debt is an assumable option there. So if you're interested, please take a look on our website or reach out to someone on our team. We're happy to talk to you about this one. And for those of you who have been on our webinars before, you know that we have a tradition of question of the day. So before we dive into content, I'm going to go ahead and prep you guys for what our question of the day is going to be, so you can be thinking of your answers. And then Toni and I will also give ours. So today, being shortly after the holidays, we are going to ask you all, what is your family's tradition regarding when you take down your holiday decorations? So lights, trees, elf on the shelf, when do those things disappear? Is it before New Year's or is it after New Year's? You will be judged on your answers. So think about that very well before you answer. So Toni, without further ado, could you please answer our question of the day, and then we'll dive into content.
Yes, I am a takedown before New Year's type of person. It's just so much clutter and so much things that are in the house that I just get overwhelmed. And as soon as they unwrap their presents and I clean the mess up, I am like ready to go the day after Christmas. So, but I also put my tree up right after Thanksgiving. So, I get a little bit of time there. So.
Toni and I are the same on that. We do day after Thanksgiving, everything goes up. And then like the moment the last present is unwrapped, things start going away. All right. Well, when you guys have questions that you want to send our way during open Q&A, feel free to use the Q&A button on the bottom screen here. Type your question and be sure to answer our question of the day as well, so that we can learn a little bit about your holiday traditions. And if you're a procrastinator, or if you are a get it done early person, and then feel free to type any questions you want. So today we're going to be talking about recruiting and about staffing, but if you've got questions related to purchasing routes, selling routes, operations, anything like that, feel free to throw it in there, and it's something that we can tackle. So Toni, I'm going to do a quick introduction, and then I'm just going to fire some questions away at you. So for those of you who have not had the pleasure of meeting Toni yet and hearing her story, we're super excited to have Toni on here for many reasons, but Toni is such an interesting bird in this space. And one of the reasons being, Toni was actually an operator of FedEx Ground routes before she started Bright Flag Recruiting. And I met Toni in 2016, and we've been working together pretty much ever since. Toni ran 4 operations in the FedEx P&D space, and she did everything from top to bottom, wore all of the hats. We've both run routes. We've both hired drivers. We've done everything it takes to run these operations. So she has a lot of really boots on the ground understanding of these businesses, which gives her a really unique take on recruiting in this space. A lot of people that are getting into the recruiting game have maybe done recruiting in other spaces, but they don't really truly understand this FedEx space. And so that experience that she has just gives her and her team a different perspective on the importance of moving quickly and the importance of quality candidates and what type of experience works, what drivers want, what you want, and helping you find that perfect mixture together to get your A team lined up. So Toni recruited for all of our operations for years and years and years, and she recruits for all of our home office staff and everything in between. So she is definitely getting the stamp of approval from our side, but I'd like to kick it over to her for Toni to share some of her wisdom with you on some things we should be thinking about as we roll into 23 for staffing and for team and for our teams and how we really grow sustainably and effectively this year. So Toni, the first thing I want to start with is if you could give contractors one piece of advice coming out of peak related to their team and kind of the changes that they might have or that they have just made in terms of letting some people go, probably because we're, staffed up so much during peak. And then as the volume drops, we have to really dip down to our core team in January. That can be a hit to some driver morale. And it can be hard to get our drivers transition from peak headspace into normal headspace, right? Normal every other time of the year. So if you could give contractors one piece of advice through that transition, what would you say?
I would, and I do this for my own entity, so it doesn't come lightly for me to say this, but I wouldn't be beholden to people just because of the longevity that they've had with your organization. I think that when people come into the organization during peak times, whether we're staffing up for peak, you're staffing up for drivers for peak, people have the ability to really show themselves show you guys what they're made of, show who they really are and what they want in terms of a position with your organization. And I think that should have some validity. And when you're making a decision on who you're going to keep and who you're going to let go, some of my favorite people are the people that have been with me forever, but are they going to be the most productive moving forward as I'm thinking about growing and as I'm thinking about scaling and I'm thinking about sustaining in this market as all the things are changing constantly with FedEx requirements and what we have to do to stay compliant. There's so much things that are evolving that, I want to keep everybody that's kind of been with me along the ride, but I also have to be realistic about who are the people that are there to really grow and that really want to do more and excel and show what they're made of to be able to grow in the organization. So I just think that you have to kind of take relationships out of it, take feelings out of it, and really just kind of look at the data and see who are the people that are the most capable of ebbing and flowing during those changes of seasonality. And as you need people to go out there and be relief drivers, I just think that it's really important to try to get your A team and base that on facts and data opposed to like feelings and how long somebody's been with you. So I know that was a long way of saying it, but it's kind of a touchy subject and it might kind of seem a little bit crass, but it's really important, for the sustainability of your organization, honestly.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point. And as we build these teams, we create relationships with our drivers, and it can be really hard to make those decisions during this time of the year. But as we all know, the name of this game is efficiency. And wherever we have overstaffing and wherever we have leaks and fat and all of that, that really creeps into the organization quickly this time of the year. And we have to make those changes early so that we can keep the organization really healthy. So I think that's some great advice. Okay, so as we look forward to February, March, we kind of move out of this post-peak season that we're in right now, and we have volume even out, and we kind of see what we're working with in terms of what we need for drivers and staffing and headcounts and all of that. Can you talk about the importance of people continuing their recruiting efforts and kind of what value add that adds to the operation and how that can support the health, even if someone feels like they're at a point of being fully staffed? Just let's speak to the importance of needing to always still be recruiting. That's something that Spencer and I talk about all of the time, and I know you echo the same mindset there.
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody that has been in this business for more than a few months or even a few months knows that attrition happens, and it can happen in any form and fashion. Somebody's wife can get pregnant, somebody's grandparent can get sick, somebody sprains an ankle, or they fail a drug test, or they get in an accident, or they get a speeding ticket, or, right? So there's always going to be a constant revolving door of kind of like your C team. Like usually you can build that A team pretty strong after peak because you can keep kind of the bulk of who you want to keep, and the people who aren't as productive you can let go. But as you guys go into February and March and April, and then especially coming into the summer months, it's really important to continually recruit so that if you want to grow, if you want to scale, or if you just want to stay where you're at, and you want to always be prepared for contingency, not contingency in the way that we think of contingency, but like a plan B in case somebody, quits or gets hurt, you always have that bench of drivers coming through. And we know that First Advantage is a challenging process to work through. So it's not like if you need a driver tomorrow, you're going to have a driver tomorrow unless you already have that residual bench of drivers kind of coming through the pipeline. And there's a lot of different ways that you can pose that with the people that you're continuously trying to recruit and build that bench of drivers with, whether you need them or not. There's all kinds of different chess games that you can play where you're moving the piece and giving them to another contractor that may need help. In return, that contractor will help you. Or, you're just keeping them warmed up and saying, hey, I might have something soon, but, just being transparent with those drivers. But regardless, having them for yourself and your entity to always be prepared in case something happens is just vital to your success, because one day you could be down one, the next day you could be up five, and then the next day you could be down half your staff. And there's no rhyme or reason to why it happens, but it always feels like when it rains, it pours, and then you're behind the eight ball. So the way that you never get caught is by always continuously recruit. And that doesn't mean you have to pump thousands of dollars into ad spend like you do when you ramp up for peak. You can be strategic on how you post your ads, where you post and place your ads, and how much you want to allocate to the visibility of those ads, but still have a streamline of drivers that you're talking to, that you're processing, and that you have coming through that pipeline. So in case something like this does happen, or maybe somebody that's working on the belt next to you, something happens to them, you say, hold on, let me help you out. I got a guy that's processing that needs a home. But if I need them, give them back, and you can do that. And it just sets you up for success. And I hear all the time that when contractors do that and follow this methodology, they don't sleep as bad at night as they did before they had this process in place. And so I think that that's, priceless, is to have that peace of mind, knowing that at any time, at a drop of a hat, you have somebody that can come in, that can train, and you're not in a 2-week waiting period.
Yeah, I
So,
think that's so important. And one of the things that I learned early on in doing this was January was one of my most vulnerable times in terms of staffing hiccups and staff shortages, because if you think about a couple of elements and how they work together, right? So I've just let go of all of my peak hires, or at least the excess from peak that I now don't need. So I am at my thinnest part of staffing that I'll probably be all year. And then combine that with it being the new year, and employers across the country are posting new opportunities, new jobs. They know that no one's looking to make a change at the end of the year. They're not looking to make a change during the holidays. So employers kind of keep some of these positions at least on pause, or not rapidly being pushed, or I guess fiercely pushing these new opportunities, right? And so that really ramps up in the beginning of the year, and you see a ton of stuff out there for people trying to fill positions and to hire. And so our drivers are in this position where they've come out of peak and they're tired. and they've been, slinging packages 7 days a week, some of them 6 days a week, certainly most of them. They've been at the highest level of volume that they're going to see all year, and they're really burnt out. And I don't have that contingency that Toni's talking about in terms of my plan B drivers, because I've just let most of them go. So you have a lot of burnout that happens in January. And you also have those new opportunities that people are faced with. And they say, you know what? I'm tired of this. I really want to move on to something else. And so my philosophy was always to continue recruiting even during January and February, so that I could be ready for that burnout, or I could be ready for someone to say, I want to take advantage of one of these new opportunities that I see. So definitely something to think about and consider, especially if you feel like your team might be comprised more of B and C players still, and you really want to boost that A team. That's something that Bright Flag can help you with as well. Just maybe you don't have really people you need to add to your team, but you've got people that you still kind of want to replace, and be searching for those B and A players rather than the C and B players. So definitely good advice there, Toni, as well.
That's a really good point, though. That leads me to something, because a lot of people were trying to staff up for peak, but they were kind of getting that bottom of the barrel group of people. Some people were a lot more lucky, and they were able to get these really A team players in, but some people weren't as lucky. And so for those people that kind of just got the heartbeats and whoever they could get in just to be able to deliver those packages, they don't have the luxury of being able to weed out the bad ones. They're still kind of stuck with a C team that they would prefer to probably elevate into a B or A team. So you're absolutely correct. That's a time in January where kind of things dissolve, and you can kind of think about what you need, what's going to make the most sense, and then be able to find, those drivers that will best suit your need. But on the catch side of that is everybody else is looking for that as well. So January is not a time really to slow down just because peak's over. It's a time to make strategic moves.
Yeah.
So that was a good point.
100%. And if you are one of those contractors who is in a lucky position and you've got an awesome A team and you might not have as many changes that you need to make, I want to talk about a couple of ways that we can spend our time in January. And for those of you who aren't contractors, if you're looking at one of these businesses, just something to keep in mind coming into January. January is a great time to train. And a lot of contractors right now are making the switch from the old way of processing drivers, where FedEx was requiring 1 year of verifiable driving experience within the last 3 years. And they're transitioning to a model where no experience is required now for your driver candidates, but they have to go through a classroom training portion and then on-road training portion that's standardized across the United States, across a few different vendors. So depending on who your vendor is, it'll look a little bit different, but the process is very, very similar, and the material is similar. So in this transition, if you've hired any drivers who've come in under the old model of verify by experience versus verify by training, those drivers have to be trained in the new training program. And so January is an awesome time to get those trainings out of the way and to transition your operation into the new training model, so that you're not trying to do that in the middle of the summer or right before peak next year when things are really crazy. You can have some of this quiet time in terms of volume to really be getting your team ready for that. So Toni, would you spend just a minute talking about how Bright Flag can help with that and the QualCert training program that you guys are offering?
Absolutely. So we have partnered with Ground Cloud, who most of you know is probably the best in route optimization, no doubt, and also the best in safety. I believe they have Jerry Veras, who's just like a mastermind of safety in and of itself, and just knows all the ins and outs to keep you in compliance with that. And they created, obviously, a program to be able to train the trainer. And so we've partnered with them to be able to offer the in-classroom portion part of that training that all of your drivers have to go through, whether they're new or old. And we're offering it at $300 a month, unlimited amount of drivers. So here's where you can be strategic and save money. So those people that you think aren't really going to be, the best fits for your culture or your organization, who maybe weren't as productive as you wanted them to be, those are the people you're going to cut. And then you're going to spend that money training and investing in those drivers that are going to be your best drivers, your A team or your B team that you can elevate to A team. And so we are here to partner with you guys, whoever is using Ground Cloud or gals, sorry, whoever is using Ground Cloud, we will offer $300 a month to train the in-classroom training portion. Why that's so important, I know it's just one day out of the 3 days of training, but if you think about it in terms of how much you have to spend in finding a place to do the training and pulling your BC or your trainer out of their day-to-day duties to try to accommodate all these multitude of different schedules. We offer it Monday through Friday, all day. So basically you would contact us and say, hey, I want to take advantage of this $300 monthly offer, which is, by the way, month to month. So you use this as you need us. That's always been our pricing model and structure. We don't want to hold you into anything, but you call us and you say, hey, I want to take advantage of this. We get you in touch with our trained trainer for Ground Cloud, and then they start scheduling those drivers to do the in-classroom training portion. And we make sure that they pass it, that they're in compliance. If there's any notes that we need to give you, the BC or the owner, on why we think that they may or may not be a good fit for the organization, we're going to give you that feedback. So we're not just aimlessly pushing everybody through who we think may be a safety issue. And then we're uploading that data into Ground Cloud so that that piece is actually done for you. And then all you have to do for the drivers that are on the older model is do the one extra day. If they're on the newer model, if they came in after, then they have to do the observed and on the road training. But that's one less day that you have to do that, or your BC has to do it. And it really is a cost savings. It's a time savings. And we're going to actually be honest with you if that driver is going to be a good fit just based on what we're seeing in that one day of training. So it's a really huge value add. It's a way to save some time. It's a way to kind of alleviate all of the questions of where am I going to do this? How am I going to rent the space? What days can I do this? It just answers a lot of those unsolved questions that you're trying to figure out, because FedEx doesn't provide that facility for most of you guys to do that in. So if you have any questions about that, if you go on our website, brightflagrecruiting.com, there's a video that Grace and I made about it. And you can reach out to us on that inquiry page and we'll call you back and explain how that process works and then get you guys signed up for it. So super excited and honored to be able to partner with Ground Cloud on that piece of the training.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that should be in everyone's forefront of their mind in January, is even if it's not necessarily right now for incoming contractors, obviously there's going to be some different things to focus on next January, but for our current contractors this January, focusing on that qual cert, making those changes now while you have some time to do it. And then just in general, for anyone who's a contractor in the future, January really should be a time to think about, how do I strengthen my team, whether it's training, whether it's better equipment, whether it's upgrading technology, whatever it is. How can I use January to strengthen my team and set them up for success in 2023? And QualCert is a really, really good one this year to be focused on. Toni, I want to ask one more question, and then we're going to dive into some Q&A. So for incoming contractors, anyone who has not stood up on an operation yet, what should they be thinking about through the process of identifying an operation and then actually stand up when it comes to recruiting and engaging with a recruiting service, like when and how and all of those things?
Yeah, I think time is kind of the essence when you're thinking about recruiting. We talk about sometimes in our speeches about mass exoduses when people are taking over operations. It's not something that happens all the time, and it's certainly not a scare tactic, but it is something that happened to us where our drivers and our BC, before we even knew them, because you don't get to talk to them at first, before they even knew us, didn't want to give us a chance because we were this big dog private equity firm coming in to buy up this mom and pop operation. And so day one after we stood up, we lost everybody. And, we didn't know what to do there. It was really scary. It was a super tumultuous time. That's when I had to deliver packages. I don't regret it because now I get to see it from a driver's standpoint. But all of that to say is that you just want to be prepared from day one. There's nothing wrong with having that driver insurance, right? You have trucks that you have insured, whether you get in accidents or not. It's a contingency program and it's insurance. And recruiting ahead of time before you stand up, even if the person that you're buying from says, hey, I have all these drivers in place and they're a solid team, you never know what's going to happen. There's just so many unknowns that you are not in control of. But if you preemptively recruit and you set yourself up for success and you start that month leading up to your stand-up date, then you have that bench of drivers ready to come through. So if anything, God forbid, happens, you're not caught going, what do I do now? You're not in the position that I was in. And that's why I love working with new contractors, kind of leading that horse to water, educating them, consulting with them, and just being that resource. So I would say a month lead up time to actually start actively recruiting from the day that they know that they're going to stand up, number one. Number two is one of the things that we offer to everyone free of charge is a free market analysis, which you can also sign up for on our website. I came from multifamily, and so we did market analysis all the time when we were trying to figure out which properties we wanted to buy and invest in. And it's good to run those comps and understand why something is worth buying and how to be competitive in that market and what your competition is in that market. And so our market analysis provides that for you. We're going to look at the comps. We're going to look at what you're potentially going to offer, what other people are offering, and how you can be competitive. Not the ceilings that you push everybody else into that, but definitely not the lowest, just so that you're comparable to what other people are offering. And then what things have worked for us in recruiting in that specific market. And just provide that information to you in a nice, neat little package that is easy to understand. It's not going to be, a gargle to you because you don't come from this space. It's going to be really concise. And we'll talk through that with you. Actually, Grace does she does the consultation where she goes over the information that we've created and put together for you. And nobody better than her to do it, since she's just been a whiz at operations from day one. And so that's something that we provide. So I'd say the market analysis, take advantage of that. It's free to you. The second thing is whether you use us, I hope you do, but if you don't, go ahead and start recruiting and just have that bench of drivers. The worst thing you have to do is just say, I'm sorry, I don't have work. Things didn't pan out, but you're in a good position. And those drivers, like I said, can be used for other contractors in your building. And that's a really good way to start a great rapport with other contractors there. So it's a win-win for everybody. And you guys can sleep easy at night because you're going to have, you're going to be drinking from the fire hose. You're going to have a million things coming at you. And worrying about recruiting is just something you don't have to do anymore. And so why not set yourselves up for success? So I would say those are the two main things that I would say to take advantage of. Grace, am I missing something? I'm sure there's probably a million other things I could say, but I think just start recruiting ahead of time, be prepared, market analysis, know what you're getting into, what your competition is and how you can be competitive in that market.
Yeah, I love that. And we're super happy to do a market analysis for anyone looking at an operation that you're saying, I'm deciding between these two markets, not really sure. And if this could help make your decision a little bit easier, we're happy to compare those with you and say, hey, we think this market is going to be a more fruitful hiring market. That's something that I certainly looked at when we were deciding where to go and what to take was, how hard is it going to be to recruit and retain drivers here? Because that is such a huge piece of being successful in this business, is being able to find the drivers, retain them, recruit them. So it would be helpful for you all to reach out at some point in your process and say, hey, let's take a look at these. All right. Well, we are going to transition to some open Q&A. Just want to remind everybody, if you've got a question, it does not have to be about recruiting, but it certainly can be, since we've got the guru with us today. So in your QA feature at the bottom, just click that button, load your question in, and don't forget to answer our question of the day, which is, do you take your holiday decorations down before New Year's or after New Year's? And we will fire away. So Toni, first question from our beloved Andy Rod. You guys
Andy.
are peas in a pod here. So Andy says, I'm Jewish. We don't have any decorations. We go to our friends, enjoy their tree and decorations, and leave the cleanup to them. I like your style, Andy. I'm not Jewish, but I could be convinced potentially with that no cleanup situation. Okay, so Andy said, Toni, how do we keep a person that we believe to be a good candidate that we don't yet need on the hook without losing them? We won't mislead folks. How do we keep them basically interested?
So there's two ways that you can do that, Andy. You can be super transparent with them and say, hey, you are the next in line. As soon as we have an opportunity, I would definitely go ahead and road test that person to get their file compliant, get them badged so that everything's ready to go. Because if you wait after a 30-day lapse, they have to go through that whole entire process together. And as I said before, and as you know, Andy, things can change in a New York minute. And so you want to have that person already prepared and ready to go. So getting them not just through the First Advantage hurdle, but also road tested, that road test uploaded their file compliance. So it flips the CDOS so they can come in and badge, and getting that piece done is an important step. Also reaching out to other contractors in your terminal to see if anybody else has work for them that can utilize them in the interim until you have space like for a permanent hire as a second way that you can do that. But I'm always transparent with the drivers. I let them know, hey, things have changed, but we really think that you're a great candidate and we would love to have you on the team. If you could just give us a little bit of time, we can make that happen. I know that you have to put food on the table for your family, but I really think that this would be a great fit and we're just not there right now. But we will continue to keep in touch with you and let you know. And then we do. So we'll have those touch points with them, hey, just want to let you know, we're still at the same spot, but we are still very, very much interested in you, just like you would as a headhunter. So just the keeping in that communication and keeping that line open holds a lot of weight with drivers. It makes them feel valued and it makes them feel like you really want them and they appreciate the honesty. So it's good that you're not misleading them because you're telling them the truth and you're keeping in contact with them, which shows that you're taking initiative as well. So it's a two-way street.
Yeah, totally agree on that. And we have a similar question from David Branch. David said that he starts late and he ends late with his decorating. So decorations come up the second week of January. And he's asking, what are you doing with all of these people that you're recruiting and running through the process, but don't have jobs for? And so this is similar to Andy's question, but I'm going to answer it in a little bit of a different way. So all of Toni's answers totally apply. One other thing I'd add here is just one clarification, I guess. So once a driver goes through all of the First Advantage approval process that they need to be approved to drive for you, and their file flips to what we call compliant, that driver candidate is approved not only to drive for you, but for any FedEx contractor in the whole United States. And so it's not difficult to transfer them to another contractor. And it really is a great thing to get them fully approved because now they have all of those opportunities, right? No matter, even if they want to relocate or, move somewhere else down the road or work for another contractor in the same building, you've gotten them approved and that's great. And so one thing you can also do is you can certainly give these candidates away, but if you're incurring cost to get these people approved, so say you're paying a Bright Flag subscription and you're paying for advertising, there's nothing wrong with selling this candidate, for lack of a better way of saying it, to another contractor. It's basically saying, I've invested money in getting this person approved. You need this person approved. I'm going to make it really quick and easy for you. Here you go. And in exchange, could you reimburse me for some of my expense that I put into getting this person approved? So some people are kind of strange about exchanging money over candidates, but I think that it's perfectly reasonable because you've put money into getting them approved and it's basically like a reimbursement for it. And you're making it super easy on your fellow contractor to have a approved, ready to go driver right away. So that's something you can do as well if you're investing in recruiting. And certainly being honest with the candidates is a number one. So Toni, Andy, you guys echoed this too, just being upfront with them from the very beginning, especially in times where you're recruiting for a maintenance purpose and you're not necessarily recruiting to fill open positions. But if it is really maintenance mode, you can be honest with those candidates from the beginning to say, hey, we don't have any open positions right now in this moment, but if you go through this approval process, there is nothing that says I won't have something open at the end of it. And, if we still don't have something open at the end of it and you're a good fit, we will continue this relationship. So honesty is really, really important. Anything to add to that, Toni?
No, I think that's great.
Okay. Next question. We are going to talk a little bit about First Advantage. So Toni, just for those attendees on here who might not be familiar with First Advantage yet, Would you just give a brief overview of what First Advantage is before we dive into this question? And then the question is, how long does it typically take to get someone approved in First Advantage if they're not using a recruiter? And then how long if they are using a recruiter? So a recruiting service.
So here's the thing about First Advantage. Let's start with that one. It is a third-party processing company that FedEx has partnered with to qualify your driver based on the FedEx requirements. So those are DOT laws, things that are going to keep you out of hot water, so to speak. So people that have the 1 year of driving experience in the last 3 years that can be verified if they're not on the new safety training program. Obviously, that's obsolete if you are on the new one. But drug tests, DOT physicals, which you don't have to have if your vehicles are under 10,000 pounds, but most people are operating with a fleet that is over 10,000 pounds. So those are DOT compliance, things that they have to have, and also background checks and MVR checks. So if there's anything on there that is going to put you in a position where safety could be an issue for your driver and for your company, First Advantage is going to find that, sometimes too well. So we'll have drivers that, made a stupid mistake when they're 18 years old, and try as we might, we can't get them through because First Advantage is that stringent and that strict. But it's to the benefit of the contractor, honestly. And that's a hard conversation we have to have, but it's on us and not you guys. So that's the benefit of using us, as we get to be the bearers of bad news. But that's essentially what First Advantage is. And then once they've gone through all of the steps of process, filling out the application, which is kind of like 90% of getting them through the gauntlet and over that hurdle. If you can get them to fill out this really challenging, not user-friendly platform application, then it's kind of smooth sailing. And then you get them through the rest of the steps of process. And then they get to a point where the only thing that they need left, if they're on the older model, is just a driving test. And then once that driving test is completed and of course passed, then you upload that, and then their file gets compliant. They're able to, it talks to the FedEx system called CDOS, and then they are able to come in and get a badge and start driving for you. But that is what First Advantage is. And we have cracked the nut of First Advantage. A lot of people have. It's just that, what is your time most valuably spent on? Do you want to be sitting there updating and checking First Advantage to see if, somebody's drug test has come back or their background check's approved, or following up with those drivers to go get a physical and a drug test and getting those results to populate? So I think that it's not a question of if it's faster that, if you have a recruiting company, it certainly should be. But there's a lot of clients that are aficionados that come to me that are just like, I figured it out. I've done it for a year. I've done it for 2 years. I've done it for 3 years. I don't want to do it anymore. I want to work on growing my business. Or I want to go fishing with my grandkids. I want to take my wife out on a date. And I know that this is a little bit costly, but it's worth it to me to have that time back, or to have my BC's time back, or I can't afford an admin. So this makes more sense to have you do it. So we partner with people that either A, don't know about First Advantage, they don't want to know about First Advantage, they hate First Advantage, they like it or they understand it. Nobody likes it. They understand it, but they don't want to do it. And then we work with those drivers and have those touch points with them literally every day to keep pushing that ball forward. So there's no time lapse in that process to get them to that finish line, honestly, as efficiently and as effectively as possible. Because as Grace said earlier, there's so much opportunity for growth in the price point that we're paying these drivers. And a lot of these jobs are going to be not in inclement weather. They're not going to be dealing with traffic. They're not going to be dealing with rude customers. They can go stand in a climate controlled building and not have all the physicality that this job entails. And so and they don't have such a strict hiring process. So the closer that you get that driver to the finish line, the fastest, you're going to see that better conversion rate. And so that's what Bright Flag is a good steward of, is just getting that conversion rate for you, and then putting that driver, in your lap for you to say, hey, yes, I like this person. I don't like this person. I'm on to the next person. And we give you that choice, but we do all of that legwork for you. And it sounds simple enough, but I would implore anybody who has never used First Advantage to put themselves in, put yourself in as a driver or a non-driver or an L10 driver, and just see how daunting that process is, and see how you get inundated with emails that make no sense. Especially a lot of these drivers aren't tech savvy. Like, that's not their gifting, and that's okay. We're hiring them to be drivers. And so that's where our company comes in to really help them navigate that process, champion for them through that process, and not make them feel dumb for not knowing how to get through it the way that we know how to get through it. So I guess the answer to your question is, I think that we do it faster. I'm pretty sure we do. I don't want to sound bombastic or anything like that, but everybody can learn First Advantage. There's modules for you to do it. It's just whether it's worth your time, or, if it's a value for you to be doing that.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit firsthand to that too, because I had to learn First Advantage, and I did our driver recruiting before Bright Flag started. And it was one of my least favorite things in the entire world. I remember telling Spencer, I was like, the last thing I ever want to do again is recruit. That was me personally, though. So some of you may love it, but I will say from my perspective, a couple things were really challenging. The first thing was, these driver candidates are not going to be on your schedule, and you have to be on their schedule if you want them to convert. When they call, you need to answer. If you can't answer, you get back to them very quickly. And when you're running an operation that needs your time and attention and focus, and maybe you're on the phone with a senior manager and you can't hop off to talk to a candidate, or you're running a route and you can't answer phone calls and safely operate this vehicle and write down things that you need to follow up on for this candidate. And, when you're not in an environment that's conducive for just waiting for the phone to ring and being there to answer and smile and nod and take notes and follow up and do this and do that, that was really challenging. And so I would lose a lot of candidates because I just couldn't be timely in my response to them. And by timely, I mean within 10 minutes or they're off to the next opportunity. It's not like timely within 24 hours, right? So that was number one. And number two, it's really, really challenging to be in the mindset of operating your business and having, I'm trying to figure out the right way to describe this. So when you have candidates that are focused on wanting this opportunity, they're expecting you to continue to be in touch with them, right? And so as a business owner or operator where you have a million things going on at one time, in your mind, you're like, okay, I talked to them. Yeah, we're good. The file's processing, right? And then all of a sudden you look up and it's been 5 days since you've talked to them. They think that this opportunity is gone. They think that, you've moved on with another candidate if they don't hear from you pretty much every day. And so that was really tough for me because I'd get bogged down in all of the day-to-day of the business. And then I'd look up and I'd be like, crap, I haven't reached out to them. They probably think that, they've probably gone with something else. So those were really difficult for me. And then I also want to touch on the timing piece too, because that's something that we certainly experienced a really, really good improvement once we moved to Bright Flag. I would say average getting someone through the First Advantage process is anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks when you're doing it on your own. Could be more if you run into a snafu that you don't catch early enough, and then you have to do some problem solving on the back end. But I would say with Bright Flag, anywhere from 5 to 10 days usually is what we see.
And it goes faster if you're using us continuously. So the first month of engagement, we're going to guarantee you X amount of drivers contingent upon what those driver needs are, right? So we guarantee that. And that's a heavy statement to just throw around, but that's what we promise. And we've been able to make good on that guarantee. But here's the thing. When you start off an engagement, you have to create ads. You have to figure out where's the best place to post them, how much ad spend that you should use on that ad to get the best yield and get the best conversion of candidates. And so that takes a little bit of time. And we're still all doing that within the month process, but you're going to see those drivers kind of coming through on the latter part of that month. But when you're on continuously month to month, then you start seeing those drivers come out in the first week, in the second week, in the third week of the subsequent month. So there's that continuation and that type of bench line that we talked about. And then those people are populating and working themselves through the system. So the first month is going to be towards the end because we're having to do all of that setup, and we don't charge for any of that. We create your ads, we do the market analysis, we tell you what the best spend is based on the analytics the different hiring platforms. Everything goes through you. We have a conversation. And then once we start, it's kind of off to the races. It's game on. It's pushing all the most qualified people that can actually pass the things, that want the job, through that process as quickly as possible. And there's just so many nuances to First Advantage that you can't even think about until they happen. Like, somebody will be at a drug testing facility with their DOT or their ISP drug test form, and you've sent 50,000 candidates to that same location, but for whatever reason, that one day, this ISP form doesn't work. And then you have to get another ISP form, and you have to have somebody there ready to help navigate that issue, so that that person doesn't get deterred because they've taken off of work to go take this drug test, and they don't know when they can have the next day off to go do that. So really being available 24/7, I mean, obviously not 24/7, but definitely between 8 to 6, 8 to 7. And then some of our recruiters help on the weekends to be able to assist those drivers, whether they be line haul or P&D, with anything that they have that's a challenge, is going to be the best way to get those drivers through and to get them through quickly. The worst thing is when they call you and you can't answer, and they really are stuck in a situation that they need your specific help in, or they're filling out the application. They've tried 3 times. The site is crashing and they can't figure it out. And you walk them through it. You help them get through that. And then they go, okay, thank you. But if you weren't there to help them, they would just say, I can't tell you how many people were like, just forget this. I hate this application. I'm not going to do it. I'm like, hold on, take a deep breath. Let's figure out what the issues are and let's resolve them together. And then they do. Because some of those things can feel really daunting and overwhelming to someone who's used to just going to like a Walmart and filling out something there and then it's done, right? We help them through every piece of that process. And whether you do it on your own or you use somebody like us, just make sure you're giving them that level of service. Because if you don't, you're going to miss out on some really good drivers that just aren't savvy in this hiring process. And for them, I like to call it like, a scavenger hunt, because they got to go do this application. And then after they do that, they have to go to this place for a drug test. Then they have to go to this place for a DOT. And if you live in a state where they have to have a specific endorsement on their license, then they have to make an appointment with the DMV and go get that. So, and then they got to come in for a road test. I mean, there's so many things that these people are being asked to do for not that great of pay. And so if you can be a good steward of helping them, they're going to appreciate that. And they're going to work with you to get through that process.
Completely agree. All right, we've got a couple more questions here in our final few minutes, so we'll try to tackle these and I'll throw them your way. So we have a question from Chris Wagner, and he's asking, well, first he answers that he takes down his decorations after the new year, as soon as the local Boy Scouts will pick it up. Perfect. Okay, this question is for prospective line haul contractors who are nervous about recruiting CDL drivers. Is the driver shortage showing any signs of abating in 2023? And does Bright Flag provide CDL recruiting services?
Yes and yes, because the schools have been open now. So during COVID, all of the CDL schools shut down. And so you had drivers that would be coming out in 2021 and 2022 that would have that 6 months of driving experience plus that approved school that you could use that suffices for the 1 full year that's actually required. So there's a whole list of driving schools that are approved for FedEx. And if they have a certificate from that school plus 6 months of on the road tractor trailer driving experience, that will suffice for that 1 year. And what happened is all those new people coming through schools that got shut down. So that's where you had a lot of the young people that would be coming into this space not able to complete that on the road or in school training. And so you lost a lot of those newer drivers coming through for a while. That's starting to kind of come back. And also drivers are wanting to come off the road more and more. And when we talk about over the road, we're talking about 5 to 5.5, potentially 6 days out. Most companies are running like 2 to 3 weeks out. So when we tell them our over the road is 5 to 6 days, that really excites them, right? And then we also have a lot of solo runs as well. So I think, yes, it is turning a corner. I think the important thing to finding the right driver is just making sure you're competitive in your offerings. You're doing things that are going to create longevity with your drivers so that your drivers are motivated to stay with you, and they're not going to be enticed by an extra cents per mile to go to the next contractor or to the next opportunity, because you've created a culture within your organization. You're paying them well, you're treating them like they're part of your organization, like they're an important part of your organization, and you're giving them benefits and things that make it more sticky for them to want to stay. And we can help work with you on those things that will help make those drivers that have longevity and not have that attrition. And then, yes, obviously we do recruit for line haul contractors, and we can do market analysis for line haul contractors as well, because we have all of that data from several years of recruiting in that space. So, and we also do BC hiring, diesel mechanics, lead drivers, anything that's linear in the FedEx space, we can do for you and work with you on what that looks like.
Perfect. You actually answered one of our questions. Gary Miller was asking if we recruit driver and fleet management. So yes, Bright Flag can help you with anything in the space that you need to make your operation run. I have asked Toni to help me make some very creative hires in the past, and she's figured out how to do it. So, so yes, she can definitely help you with that. And Gary, de-Christmases on New Year's Day. So thank you for answering our question of the day. One other thing I wanted to add to Toni's answer on this line haul piece here is when you're looking for line haul drivers and when you're recruiting line haul, it is so important to understand what those drivers want. I talk about this all the time with new incoming contractors and with people who've been in P&D and are transitioning into line haul or adding line haul. It is a different mentality than your P&D drivers. Your line haul drivers are career drivers. They've spent time and money getting this additional licensure, and they're operating really, really, really dangerous equipment every single day. And they're expecting to be doing this as their career, right? And so what they want is they want pay and benefits and all of these things that most of us get when we engage in a career path. And your P&D drivers are much more transient. You're going to have that turnover. This is oftentimes I'm doing this until fill in the blank type job. Line haul's different. And so it's super important to do those market analysis and to really pick Toni's brain as you're recruiting, because she's seen so many different markets out there, and she's seen different pay structures, different incentive structures. She's seen what drivers like, what they don't like, how they respond well, how they don't respond well. And it's so important to make sure that your package that you're offering them is enticing, because that's really the only way to be competitive in the space. Because even if we are turning a corner with the shortage, there's still a shortage. And so you've got to be really competitive in that space. And having someone like Toni in your corner to really say, hey, I think this is what you need to offer here has been really helpful for us. So just something to think about as you're structuring your package for line haul. All right, we've got a question from Tim, and Tim says that he takes down his decorations on 12/30. It is over. I agree with you. So Tim says that he is a new prospective P&D ISP owner, and he's been approved by First Advantage, and he has his FedEx ID. The terminal was attempting to update CDAS with his information, but he couldn't log in due to a lack of a password. I know it's a random question, but I thought you may know a step disconnect. So interesting. I am going to guess that there is something missing in your transition from First Advantage into CDAS. Oftentimes when this happens, you don't get that email that generates your password. One thing that you can do to just verify that, Tim, is if you go to the MyGroundBiz or MyBiz account website, there's actually a 1-800 number there that you can call for password reset. If you call, it's going to ask you for a couple things. It asks you for your FedEx ID and it asks you for the last 4 of your social. And when you type that in, if it tells you that there's an error or it can't give you a password regeneration, it means that you haven't clicked over into CDAS effectively. So try that. If it gives you a password reset, awesome. Use that. You can reset your password. But tell your terminal if it's not able to generate a password, say, hey, there's a disconnect. Can you push it again and see if the file comes over? So a little bit in the weeds, but that's what we're here for. All right, Toni, I will spend the last couple minutes maybe just letting you wrap up here, offering any last words of wisdom, and then we will say sayonara for this week.
I would just say, use me as a resource. You can pick my brain whether you're my client or not. That's what this whole ecosystem that Route Consultants has created, is to just be a resource for you guys. So whether you're thinking about becoming a client or you want to give it a go on your own, regardless, we're here to be able to answer those questions. So my contact information is on the website. It's the 404-556 number. So you can call me, you can send an inquiry, we can do your market analysis, we can kind of talk through what you're looking at and what those hiring pain points look like, whether you're current or you're brand new to the game. And just happy to work side by side with you guys to just be there, because I know firsthand, Grace knows firsthand how daunting this can all be, and how sometimes you feel like you're drinking from the fire hose and maybe you're sinking and there's some things that you're missing. And there are things that you will miss, but you will learn as you go. But recruiting doesn't have to be one of those, because I'm here as a resource for you. So I will always be honest with you and give you the good, the bad, the ugly. And you can do with that information what you want. But I would implore you to utilize me in any capacity that you see fit. And if it's something that I don't have a question, an answer for your question, I will use my network of wonderful people that I've met through this experience to be able to get the best answer for you guys. So I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to us. And I hope that it has been a value add and has given you guys a little bit more context to some of the questions that you had, and given a little bit more color to what this whole recruiting game is like. But excited for all of you guys and your new opportunities and existing opportunities, and look forward to partnering with you guys in 2023 if possible. So thank you.
Thanks for being here, Toni. We always love
Yeah.
to have you. And thank you guys for hopping on the webinar today. It's awesome to be able to chat with you guys every week and to hear your funny and interesting answers to our very creative questions of the day that you guys come up with. So thank you for entertaining us, and hopefully you learned something. We're excited to see you next week, and we will talk soon.